I turned a discarded piece of wood into a wine goblet. You know, the interesting thing about woodworking is, with a little bit of thought, you can make something out of virtually any small piece of wood. So I just found this possibly discarded log and let me see what I can make with this. Today I'm going to be working with reclaimed wood. I found this small log left outside in the sun and the rain for I don't know how many months. It has knots, it has cracks, and it's pretty useless. But I'm going to see if I can set this up on the lathe and turn it into a wine goblet. So the first thing to do would be to get rid of the knots. The knots are very hard and I'll have to get rid of them using slow passes with my spindle gouge before I can start rounding over this piece of wood. I'm not even sure what kind of wood this is, but I think I got lucky. As it turns out, this is a softwood. My guess is it's possibly a branch of a kodum tree, which is available widely all across North Bengal. If you're wondering why I don't use a face shield, it's because I find them suffocating. I don't really mind the sawdust on my skin. Now that the knots are taken care of, I'm going to start rounding over this piece of wood. Now this log is pretty wide and I'm going to need a much smaller diameter before I can start shaping the wooden wine glass. I've removed all the excess wood and now I can start working on the wooden wine glass. I'm measuring the diameter of this piece here just to make sure it matches the outer dimensions of the wooden wine glass. I'm going to start by carving out the inside of the glass, so I'm repositioning the tool rest here. This piece has been lying out in the sun for so long that there are cracks everywhere, especially in the center. So I'm starting off by carving out the insides of the glass, which in turn will also remove a lot of these cracked pieces from the center. I'm going with slow, steady passes and hoping that my chisel doesn't get caught in any of the cracks or the holes and just breaks the entire thing apart. I'm using a smaller spindle gouge and a skew chisel to carve out the insides of this wine goblet. Slow motion makes everything look cool, even when there's sawdust flying into your face. After I've carved to a depth of about 80 mm, I reposition the tool rest so I can start shaping the outside of the wine goblet. I'm using pencil marks to mark out the bottom stem of the glass, and I'm going back to using a larger spindle gouge to start shaping this part. I'm just going to remove a little bit of wood to get the rough shape ready, and I'm going to leave the rest of the shaping for later. That's because there still are a lot of holes and cracks remaining in this wood, and that will have to be filled first before I can continue shaping this glass. I don't want to use a traditional wood filler for the cracks, so instead I'm using a two-part epoxy here and adding some colored pigments to make the cracks look a little bit more interesting. I'm using epoxy adhesive and not the clear resin, and when this stuff cures, it's a lot harder than the clear resin. After letting the epoxy adhesive cure overnight, it's time to start cleaning this up. My spindle gouge makes quick work of all the excessive epoxy drips, but I also have to be careful not to remove too much wood as I'm pretty close to the outside dimensions of the wine glass. The wine glass will be about 70 mm in diameter at the bottom and will taper towards the top at around 65 mm. Rounding over these surfaces when you're working with soft woods is so much easier. If I was working with a darker and more dense wood, something like black shirish or shisham wood, making this wine glass would have taken twice as long. The only thing remaining for the outside shape is to thin out the lower stalk of the wine glass. But before I do that, I'm going to stop and make sure that all the cracks and the holes have been properly filled in with the epoxy adhesive. As you can see, the epoxy has done its job pretty well. I'm cleaning up the insides of the wine glass by clearing out the tape and any excess epoxy squeeze out, running a few finishing passes for a smooth surface, and making the walls thinner to get the final shape of the wine glass. After removing the final bits of tape, it's time to start sanding. I'm going to start with 80 grit sandpaper and and work my way all the way up to 600 grit. Now the only thing remaining is to make the lower stalk of the wine glass thinner to complete the shape. I have to be extra careful here because the wood is so soft that as the stalk gets thinner, the glass also becomes more delicate. So it's going to be slow, steady passes, removing a little bit of wood with each pass until the final shape is complete. After a little bit of sanding on the outside, shaping the wine glass is finally complete. All the holes and the cracks have been filled in by the colorful epoxy glue, and now the wooden wine glass is ready for the finish. I'm using an Italian water-based food-safe finish made by ICA. Now this stuff doesn't react with wine or any other alcoholic substances, so it's perfect for any surfaces that come into contact with any food items. The polish has also made the colored epoxy really pop, and it's turned out to be way better looking than just using a regular wood filler. I've applied 3 coats of food safe polish with sanding in between each coats, and after letting it dry for about an hour, it's time to remove this wooden wine glass. So there you go, what was once a cracked and discarded piece of wood is now a wine glass. I went ahead and made another one from pine and mahogany. So which one do you prefer? The distressed look of the reclaimed wood, or the clean lines of the pine and mahogany glass?